All right, previewing the other new SEC team that we have in 2024. That is the Oklahoma Sooners, who really bounced back in a big way after a horrible start to the Brent Venables era at Oklahoma. They went 6-7 in 2022. That was their first losing season in the 21st century. Obviously, going 10-3 last year, lost in the Alamo Bowl. Really good bounce back. It led to a big contract extension for Brent Venables. But really this year, Dalton, 2024, whole new era of Oklahoma football. I mentioned before, it's their first in the SEC. New starting quarterback as Dylan Gabriel transferred to Oregon. New offensive coordinator as well because Jeff Lebby was hired as a Mississippi State head coach. They also have a brand new offensive line as well. They have a really good receiving core and a loaded defense at the second and third levels, man. But this is a brand new Oklahoma that we're going to get used to in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a new offensive line and a young quarterback, but the one thing that can help all that out and making situations better is their defense. And if you look at the back seven of their defense, it's one of the better units in the country. They have one of the top 10 secondaries. You've got, that's headlined by Billy Bowman at safety. You've got Danny Stutsman at linebacker, who, played through some injuries late last year, but still ended up a third-team All-American. He was one of our top 10 linebackers. You look at the middle of their defense, and in the SEC, you have to have a defense to survive. Like, you're not going to survive playing one-dimensional football. We saw with LSU last year, best offense, best player in the country last season, and they gave up way too many points and just didn't succeed the way they wanted to. So I think Oklahoma having this defense, especially with such a young offense, especially the back seven and down the middle at linebacker and safety, is going to give them a chance to still win games.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest weakness, though, we mentioned before, it's a brand new offensive line, man, with a new quarterback under center as well. They don't return any of their starting offensive linemen from last year. Now, they brought in a really good transfer we'll talk about later on, and Branson Hickman, the center from SMU. But other than that, man, there are major questions about the other four spots on this offensive line. We got a true sophomore at quarterback, too, in Jackson Arnold, who's really never started before either. It is a little, besides the bowl game, it is a little concerning for this brand new offensive line. So tell me about Jackson Arnold, though, Dalton, the former five-star recruit coming out of high school, Oklahoma's new signal caller as well. What should we know about him as he heads into his sophomore year?
I think it's hard to really take the stats off of such limited playing time. He did have 5 turnover-worthy plays in the bowl game against Arizona, but you're talking about a bowl game in your first start against a top 10 team, right? So it's tough. But no, I think a lot of people make Baker Mayfield comps with Arnold. They're kind of built similarly, probably a similar level of like decent but not elite athleticism. I think he's got a very natural rhythm and a very clear process when he's operating within the pocket, right? And we'll see how the offense looks going from Jeff Lebby to Seth Littrell as their offensive coordinator. Littrell is generally a little more vertical than Lebby was, whereas Lebby's very much RPO, get the ball out quick, and maybe throw the ball down the sideline. But no, Arnold can make every throw, right? Like, I don't think there's any question about that. And he's got enough athleticism to improvise to throw. The bigger thing with me, and this kind of just comes with being a young guy, right? And we'll see how it improves during the years. Sometimes that rhythm and that flow and that process in the pocket can be a little bit mechanical, right? Like when you talk about, maybe you see that first defender, but you don't see that second one coming, creeping as a robber or creeping from a zone. Look, I think all 4 of his big-time throws last year were into single coverage. He can clearly identify one-on-one matchups and exploit them, and they have a good receiving core, and he should be able to do that. It's into zone coverages or getting from his first read or, to his second read or looking off safeties and things like that. It's kind of that thing where it's like, okay, you can have a 1-2-3 mechanical process in the pocket, and at times that works. But there's also an element where you have to be kind of loose about it, right? And looking off safeties and manipulate with your eyes. Joe Burrow is like one of the masters of that. Mahomes is great at it too, where it's just like you can't give guys that extra step, letting them know where you want to go. And again, Arnold, look, he's a freshman last year, right? And he made 1 start and, he played a little bit in a few other games. But his process being a little bit less mechanical is what's going to help him. But I think he's got good feel. I think he's got good poise. I think, there were times in that Arizona game he looked really, really good, right? Cutting down on big mistakes and seeing secondary defenders is going to be a big thing for him. But I think Oklahoma certainly has something to work with him.
Absolutely, yeah, man. Former 5-star recruit for a reason. He's got a lot of talent, and I'm excited to see what he could do in his first year as Oklahoma's starting quarterback. And a guy who's going to be really helping him along, I think, is Branson Hickman, their new center, transferring in from SMU. I mentioned him before. He had 2 excellent years for the Mustangs. No returning center in the country has been more valuable over the last 2 years than Branson Hickman, according to our wins above average metric. The only center in the country who has an 80-plus grade as both a pass blocker and run blocker over the last 2 years as well. So Branson Hickman, man, not a great athlete, plays with great leverage, though, plays with great balance as well. Just a fundamentally sound center for Oklahoma. And like I said, man, they have so many question marks on that offensive line. The only spot where they don't is right in the middle with Branson Hickman, who I think will be the best center Oklahoma's had since Creed Humphrey, who is now the best center in the NFL with the Kansas City Chiefs right now. He is a stud, and I think a big addition. Now, I'd be really, really worried about this offensive line if they didn't add Branson Hickman from the transfer portal. This is a big get for Brent Venables, man, getting one of the best centers that we have in college football, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. To have that anchor and to have that pivot, really, it gives, if nothing else, it gives you a leader, right? It gives you a productive leader that can lead all those other guys. It's going to be a really young group. And I'll tell you, even on defense, they've got a productive leader right in the middle and a fan favorite, Danny Stutsman, man. Look, we have him as a top 5 returning linebacker in the country. You can just see the absolute swagger in that video right there. But, this is a guy who his traits, we'll see where the production goes, but his traits remind me a little bit of Peyton Wilson, who got drafted out of NC State last year. He's long and he's fast. He can really run. He's got, sometimes he's a little too aggressive, but man, you talk about a playmaker, tied for 8th in the Power 5 among linebackers with 37 run D stops. He can blitz a little bit. There's like a little, I don't know, we'll see if he has that breakout into an elite year like Peyton Wilson had last year. But I think when you watch him, that's what you get reminded of a little bit. He can step back, play up on the edge, but those are the 2 things that keep coming to mind with me with Stutsman. Well, I should say 3, really. Speed, length, and leadership is what he brings their defense, and they're going to need every bit of it playing against these SEC offenses.
Absolutely, man. Elite Instagram as well. There's some great captions on his Instagram. That video, by the way, when they played Texas in the Red River rivalry, in the pregame, he's like, I think the quote was, he was like, "There's 2 things I know in life: Oklahoma fears God, and Texas fears Oklahoma." And that just fired everyone up. And obviously they went on to win that game, so that probably led to them winning that game. He is the man, dude. He is the absolute man, and I'm a huge fan of Danny Stutsman. We mentioned, man, the swagger is out of control with that guy. All right, bottom line time now, Dalton. So many moving parts on this Oklahoma roster. It's really, really hard to project this team because there's so many unknowns on this roster right now. As they go into the SEC, though, their first year in the SEC, what should the expectations be for the Sooners in 2024?
I mean, they can expect to win because Oklahoma always expects to win, right? There just are a lot of moving parts. You have basically a brand new quarterback, a brand new offensive line, a brand new offensive coordinator, a defense that does have some pieces, but now you're in a brand new conference too, and an even tougher conference than the Big 12, right? Now you're in the SEC. Now you have to deal with the gauntlet, right? That's kind of the way I always think about it. I don't know that they're fully prepared to play this gauntlet every single week. There's just so many new pieces, and it feels like offensively they're going to be really, really young, right? Now, if Arnold shows us his potential, which there is a lot of, you could be talking about a surprise team, but I think this is going to look, especially offensively, more like a development type of season. Like, I wouldn't be shocked to see Oklahoma come away with only 7 or 8 wins just because there's just so much unknown. And when you're this unknown offensively and this young offensively, it can be tough. It can be a really tough adjustment going from the Big 12 where there's not, there's probably 5 SEC defenses better than the best defense in the Big 12 right now, right? So I think it's going to take time. I think, and I know they hate it down there, but patience, I think, is the word for Oklahoma. It's not. I think they're still going to be good. I don't see them in playoff contention. I'll be honest with you. I think there's some talent, but they're so young offensively that unless Jackson Arnold is an instant superstar, it's going to be really, really hard.
Yeah, man, and their win total for FanDuel is set at 7.5. We project them at 7.6. I think that's around what I'd say as well, if not lower, man. I think 7-5 is what I'm probably saying for this team right now because you look at the schedule. They're at home against Tennessee, which that's going to be a tough game, but I'll give them that. I'll give them Tennessee. They play Texas. I don't think they're going to win that game. They're at Ole Miss. Don't think they're going to win that game. They're at Missouri. Don't think they're going to win that game. They home against Alabama. Don't think they're going to win that. And they're at LSU. That's 5 right there. And you're talking about that Tennessee game's a little bit of a toss-up. That's maybe 6, right? So you're talking about...
And it's James Pierce Jr. against this offensive line.
Right.
He could single-handedly, honestly, win them that game. It's going to be a matchup thing with this O-line if it doesn't play up where any team with a respectable pass rush could be a serious problem.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this next year. So 7-5, man, I think is around what I expect for Oklahoma. So not as bad as maybe as the 6-7 they were a couple years ago. It won't be as good as the 10-3 they were last year. There's a lot of moving parts. I still have faith in Brent Venables and this Oklahoma team, but I don't think it'll be a smooth transition to the SEC like I think it probably will be for a team like Texas, for example. I think it could be a little bit of a rough go initially for Oklahoma, but they will get their footing, obviously, getting some good recruiting classes coming in there and young players on both sides of the ball, too. That's what we got for Oklahoma, our preview of Oklahoma. Again, we have doing this for every single one of the 70 Power 5 teams, so make sure you subscribe to the channel for more videos like this coming out soon.